for more on this saga and what it all really means, I want to bring in retired three-star Army General Keith Kellogg. He's also the co-chair of the Center for American Security at the America First Policy Institute. General Kellogg, always good to have you on the show. Thank you, sir.
Hi, Vince. Thanks for having me. Good to be with you today.
Let's talk about Tim Walz. This is one of those things that I come from a military family. My dad's a Marine. My brother's a Marine. I got tons of cousins and uncles that are military service members. But as you get into the details here, sometimes it gets a little hard for a civilian like me to navigate it. Give me a sense of what you think Tim Walz is guilty of here.
Yeah, look, Vince, this is personal for me because I've been through this long ago. And I fought in the Vietnam War, a couple of tours there as a combat infantryman and special forces officer. I came back, and it was a pretty divisive time in the United States of America. And after the war ended, a lot of people started coming in line saying, "Oh, I served, I did this." Like it was truly stolen valor. I mean, there were people like there was a current senator, Blumenthal, who did that, and then you had an actor named Brian Dennehy did it. And a lot of people kind of said, "Well, I was there and I did it." No, that's basically you're taking the valor and the efforts of people who had gone before you. And sometimes I go over to the Vietnam Wall and I look at it, and it's wonderful, and because the onyx on there reflects you. There are 58,318 names on that wall, and those of us that came out of the war kind of made a promise to them because there are names, there are people on that wall that I led, that died under my command, under my leadership, even as a junior officer. People that I held when they died and wept when they died. And so I said, I kind of gave them a promise that I would make sure that this kind of stuff didn't happen again. So fast forward to today. You fast forward today, you've got a Governor Walz of Minnesota, who says he did certain things, and he actually didn't. And now I'm kind of saying, look, I have a daughter who served in combat in Afghanistan. I have a younger son who served in combat as a platoon leader in the 82nd Airborne Division in Afghanistan in combat. My son-in-law fought in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and I owe it to them to make sure that people get called out. And what has happened is you have somebody like Governor Walz who said, in his own words, he has said he's done certain things. He talked about a quote that he said, talked about weapons of war, that I quote, I carried in war. No, he didn't. Or then he said another thing, as a congressman, he was in a public display, and it's on, it's a public record. He said, I am retired command sergeant major. No, you're not. You're retired master sergeant. And so you get things like that, and it comes down to integrity of the person, integrity of what is actually happening. That's what I'm talking about when you talk about stolen valor. Don't be something or say something you're not. J.D. Vance, to his credit, J.D. Vance was a Marine. He served in combat. And people forget that people died as journalists. Over 20 journalists died in war. There was at least one public affairs specialist, a guy that happened to be named James Hunter, was a U.S. military public affairs officer killed in Afghanistan. So this is one of those, he did something that Walz didn't, and then he's trying to hide from it. It's all public record. There's the receipts. There's people out there who may not like it, but that's the way it is.
Give me a sense of, I want to break down some of the elements of this. So Tim Walz has claimed, apparently on multiple occasions, that he's a retired command sergeant major. As you point out, that is a lie. He is retired at the rank of master sergeant. There's a claim that he served for a short time as a command sergeant major, but he failed to ultimately fulfill the requirements of that rank, and then was, some media say, reverted back. That sounds like a demotion to me. Can you filter through what all of that means?
Sure, it's quite simple. He said, quote, I am retired command sergeant major. No, you are not. You are retired master sergeant. If you don't fulfill the requirements of the duty, then you are reduced in rank. Look, I'll give you an example, a general officer rank. General officer, you are allowed to retire, approved by Congress, at a certain level. For example, at a 3-star, you retire as a 3-star if you were serving 3-star. But if you don't fulfill the requirements of the 3-star position in the reasonable amount of time that they want you to be in that position, then you revert to 2 stars. The same back to 1 stars as well. That happens in all the services. Just be honest with what you are. I'll give you a good example. He's a wonderful officer. David Grange Jr. commanded the 1st Infantry Division as a major general. He left the Army because he didn't serve the requirements to get to general officer, retired as a brigadier general. Okay, He's a retired brigadier general, served as a major general, did fill the requirements, came back. And I love Dave Grange. I served under his father. But I'm just telling you, they're examples. Have integrity. Say, this is really what happened. It doesn't hurt to say that. Just be honest with it. But the one that really gets me is the fact when he made a comment, when he was talking about weapons of war, he said about the weapons, quote, this is a quote, that I carried in war. No, you didn't. And you imply something you are not. And that's what I'm talking about. And it comes down to one simple word that in the military is critical in leadership positions, and the word is called integrity. Your dad knows that as a retired general officer, okay? And that's where I'm coming from, and that's the reason I'm calling him out. I'm not going to go there. I wouldn't let anybody go there with that.
Let me play the audio you're referencing. This was posted by the Kamala Harris campaign. They were proud of this clip. But they're featuring a bald-faced lie from Tim Walz. Take a listen to this audio.
Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and said, Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army, and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
There's a whole bunch of reasons why that's pernicious audio. The lie is the big one. But another one here, General Kellogg, is that he's using that lie in the service of disarming Americans. It doesn't really get much more contemptible than that.
Yeah, I'm with you completely on that one. Look, where I'm coming from, this is an individual. When you look at that ticket, Kamala Harris made the comment, and she's absolutely correct. This is a huge choice. The choice of where this country is, where it should go, have two governing philosophies. The choice could not be more clear to Americans. And they need to sit down really hard, I believe, Vince, and really think hard about this. Where do you want this country to go? Where do you want it to go for your sons and your daughters and your grandchildren as well? I know where I want it to go, and it's not with them. And for somebody who makes comments like that, I get very, very concerned about what other comments he'd make and the comments he'd make to the American people, in fact, lie about it. Look, if he did, it's easy for him to say, I didn't do it. I didn't go to war. Those are not weapons that I carry in war. I'm a retired master sergeant. By the way, there's nothing wrong in life about being a retired master sergeant. Nothing. And I don't know why he did it.
No, one of the things that stands out here, too, is that he was in a position of leadership. It's a big deal to be a master sergeant, of course, and a command sergeant major is what he wanted to be but failed to meet the requirements for. What we're finding out now is that in 2005, as his unit was about to deploy to Iraq, that he had some sense that this was coming, that a deployment was coming up, and it was at that moment he decided, okay, I'm getting out. And this has led a number of people who served in that unit to have a lot of contempt for him, saying they were left holding the bag, and he jumped out before that deployment. What do you make of this? How does this work, first and foremost, in terms of your ability to get advanced knowledge of a deployment? And what does it tell you if he's given advanced knowledge that a deployment to Iraq is coming and he bails on his unit?
Well, I listened to the soldiers, Vince. I mean, the soldiers just told the story right there that they don't trust him. They don't believe he was a true leader, and that he ducked when they were actually going to a tough combat zone. They weren't going to Italy or they weren't going to Germany. They were going into combat. That he basically said, no, I've got better things to do. That's another part of integrity, the fact that he saw it was not selfless service. It was all in for himself. And the soldiers saw that. And that's the reason why you're seeing these former non-commissioned officers coming out, former soldiers, the mother of a young man that was killed from his unit when it deployed into combat. That's why they're saying this. And it just shows the character of the man. You know, here's what I've said. I'm going to do a huge intellectual shift for you right now. You know, when President Trump was nearly assassinated recently, when he stood up and said, fight, 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 I said, I know I've been shot at in combat. And something about that makes you really realize who you are and what you are. It really shows the mark of a man or a woman who's been involved in that. And it really shows true colors. I believe Donald J. Trump showed true colors that day when he stood up, blood on his face, and said, fight, fight, fight. I think Walz showed true colors on himself when he said, I think I'll do this. I won't deploy with these men and women that he had led for years. He basically abandoned them in the fight, in the face of a fight. And I think that's, to me, on a personal level and professional level, that's actually disgraceful.
What is the role, General Kellogg, of a senior non-commissioned officer? How important is that job in the United States military, and what kind of role model are they supposed to serve to the troops who follow them?
Yeah, I'm sure your dad would say the same thing I just said because he's a Marine general. I know he thinks the same way I probably do. Non-commissioned officers, senior non-commissioned officers actually run the units. They do. I mean, I used to always kind of laugh about it. I said, hey, I used to tell the officers in the units, and when I was in the 82nd, I said, guys, we're Christmas help. The guys that are really around here full time are your senior non-commissioned officers because they are the glue of the organization. So that's the fabric that stays there because they don't come and go like officers do. They come for a year, 2 years, 3 years. The non-commissioned officers stay there 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So they develop a bond, a trust within the organization, and you expect that trust to continue into a combat zone. I never, by the way, all the units I've commanded, to include the Army's 82nd Airborne Division, I never had an NCO terminate before they went on a combat mission. Never. In fact, it was usually just the opposite. They were willing to kick down the door, and threaten everybody unless they went with them. So it was just the opposite. It's kind of the opposite view of life that I came from and the view of the military that I came from out there. Look, I'm going to brag on her, okay? My wife deployed to Grenada, and she didn't have to do that, but she was one of those who volunteered in the Operation Just Cause, a young officer, happened to be an AG officer, but she was willing to deploy. She kind of kicked down the door to go to an organization that didn't want women at that time in the military, didn't want women in combat. So, her, my daughter who served in combat, as I said before, my son-in-law who served both Afghanistan and Iraq, and my youngest son who served in Afghanistan as a platoon leader of the 82nd Airborne Division. So it's something I wouldn't expect from a non-commissioned officer or an officer as well. You go where you're sent to. You go to there's a term I used to always use. I'd always admire men and women who would move to the sound of guns. And that is the role you are in the military. That is what you should do. When the guns sound, that's where you should be. And as leaders, you should be right in front of them, leading them.
Man, your whole family, sir? What's in the drinking water at the Kellogg household? That's what a great story. You guys are just unbelievable. I always appreciate our conversation, sir, and really, really appreciate your insight today. Thank you, General Kellogg. Good to talk to you.